Hello friends, and welcome to my today's lecture, that is on the meter and the rhyme scheme used in Wallace Stevens' poem Anecdote of the Jar. Friends, in my last lecture I had spoken about the summary of the poem, the various themes that Wallace Stevens deals with in his poem Anecdote of the Jar, and also the symbols that are there, the form that the poem deals with. I had spoken about the two symbols of the jar as well as nature, and also the themes like humanity versus nature. One which creates on its own, and the other jar which is created by somebody. Today I'll be talking about the meter and then the rhyme scheme that is followed in the poem Anecdote of the Jar by Wallace Stevens. Now, as far as meter is concerned, for the most part, this poem Anecdote of the Jar, it uses iambic tetrameter, which means that there are 4 iambs per line, or 4 poetic feet with an unstressed and then a stressed, a da then dum syllable pattern. For earlier we used to talk about the iambic pentameter lines, usually in certain sonnets and all, which had 5 pairs, one unstressed and the other stressed, another stressed, unstressed, and then stressed. Here in this poem we have iambic tetrameter, means 4 iambs per line, one unstressed and then stressed. For example, we have lines 1 and 2. I placed a jar in Tennessee, and round it was upon a hill. Now, when I speak these 2 lines, you must have noticed that I have stressed the second syllable of the 2 syllables in this whole line. I is a little short and a little less sounding. I placed is stressed, again jar is stressed, and 10 is stressed, and C is stressed. In the second line, and round it was upon a hill. Now here the words round, was, pon, and a hill. The second syllable is stressed in this iambic tetrameter. Now these lines, they feature perfect iambic tetrameter, which gives the poem a very poem-like feel. To put it simply, that it sounds like poetry, like something that is very carefully crafted by the speaker. Now the poem like this, the jar, it is, we all know, a human-made object of sorts, and there's something very gently comic about this aspect of the poem too. Now the speaker here, he seems caught between the inconsequential act of placing the jar on the hill, and then also the need to say something profound or something poetic about it. Now there are 3 lines in which the poem deviates from the iambic tetrameter. 2 of these variations we can see in line 3 and 4. It made the slovenly wilderness surround that hill. Now, it's also possible to scan this wilderness as wilderness. Either way, the poem clearly loses the rhythmic regularity that is established in line 1 and 2. So the speaker here describes the way that the wilderness surrounds the hill on which the jar sits. And this disruption in the poem's steady meter, it reflects the disorderly chaos, as the speaker can see, of the Tennessee landscape. Now, in other words, the poem loses the temporary control of the meter to signal the unpredictability of the nature. Now, we see that line 4 is a short one. Surround that hill. Now, it chooses iambic dimeter. Since there are only two iambs in this line, and it also serves the similar purpose, abruptly bringing the stanza to an end. Now, there is another variation which occurs in line 10, where the jar is described as the jar was grey and bare. Now, this line is 1 foot short, which means that the emptiness of the jar, contrasting its barren negative space with the flourishing natural life all around it. That's all about the meter that the poem Anecdote of the Jar follows. Now I'll be talking a little about the rhyme scheme. Now, when we read through the poem and see the stressed and the unstressed syllable, basically at the end of the poem or at the end of the line, we see that it does not have a steady rhyme scheme, but it does have some rhymes all throughout the poem. For example, in line number 7, we see that the words round and ground are used. So this shows the internal rhyme between them. And the rhyme sticks out in the poem, much like the jar sticks out in the Tennessee's wilderness. So, towards the end of the poem, we see that there's also a string of 3 end rhymes in a row. In line 8, 9, and 10, where the last words, air, everywhere, and bare, are rhyming with each other. So this sudden rush of rhyme, it builds up the momentum of the poem, perhaps suggesting excitement on the part of the speaker as the end of the anecdote approaches. So that's all about the form or the meter and the rhyme scheme that is dealt with in the poem Anecdote of the Jar by Wallace Stevens. I'll be coming up with more aspects of it in my next few lectures. Till then, goodbye and thank you, friends.